Okay, so we're on to 2.6 transformations of functions part 2. And so this is kind of a continuation of what we were doing in 2.5, but now we're going to introduce 5 basic functions. And so the first one we're going to look at is the quadratic function right here. And so this function right here is f of x is equal to x squared. And we're going to use transformations to kind of move this around. And so we want to find some key points that we want to move. And so we're going to use these 3 key points right here. And so if I were to make a table, or actually I'll just use my function notation. So f of -1 would be equal to -1 squared. And so -1 times -1 is +1. And so that's that ordered pair right here. When x is -1, y is +1. And then f of 0, well, let's see, 0 squared would just be 0. So that's this point right here, 0, 0. And then the last point that we're going to use is f of 1, and 1 squared is 1. And so we can see that point is right there. And there's other points, like if I were to plug in f of 2, that would be 2 squared, which would be 4. And this is an even function, by the way, because f of -2, I would also get +4 for that also. So this is an even function. It's symmetrical currently to the y-axis. Now, once we do some transformations, it may no longer be an even function. But we call this the parent function right here. The parent function is. Okay, so this is going to be very similar to the previous lesson. But what we're going to do is we're going to use these 3 points and then use the transformation to graph the new function. So right here we have f of x is equal to x squared. So that's the parent function right here, minus 2. So the transformation is going to be that we're going to go down 2 spots. We're going to go down 2. And so we're going to take those 3 points and shift them down 2 spots. So our original 3 points are right here. We're going to shift them all down 2 spots like that. And then we'll just go ahead and graph that. Like that's kind of a bowl shape to it. And there we are. And just a little note here, when you're doing your homework on the computer system, you'll want to plot the vertex, that's known as the vertex. You want to plot that first, and then either of the other 2 points, and this will be populated on your graph for you when you're doing your homework. So plot the vertex first, and then either of those 2 points, and you should be in good shape. Okay, looking at the next one, you'll notice that we have f of x is equal to x minus 3 squared. And so if you recall, a tip I kind of gave was what's occurring inside the parentheses, it's going to be the opposite of what you would kind of assume is affecting x. So x take away 3, it's actually going to increase all our x values by 3. So we're actually going to move to the right. We're going to go to the right 3 spots. And so here's those original 3 points. We'll shift them to the right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And there is my new graph for f of x right there. And if you want to, you can always plug stuff in to see the algebra that it does work. So for example, if I were to plug in f of 4, that would be 4 take away 3 squared, which becomes 1 squared, which is 1. And you can see right there, that point is right there at 4, 1. All right, on our next one, you can see that right here, we're actually going to be multiplying x squared by 2. And so that's going to cause a vertical stretch of a factor of 2. And so what we're going to do here is basically it's stretching vertically by a factor of 2, or if you just kind of want to put it in direct terms of what's taking place is we're going to go ahead and multiply the y values by 2. We're going to multiply y by 2. So here are my original 3 points. And then the y value for these two outer points were 1. And we're going to multiply those y values by 2. So it's going to stretch those up to here. And then the vertex, the y value is 0. So 0 times 2, that's actually just going to stay right there at 0. And so what this is going to do is it's going to kind of, let me do this in a different color. It's going to stretch this vertically, but it's also going to kind of cause these sides to kind of come in a little bit tighter. And so you just kind of have to be careful. It's a little bit tighter there at the bottom, that curve. So just kind of be careful right there because you want to have that curve. And you'll be doing this on the computer, so it shouldn't give you too much trouble. Once again, plot the vertex and then either one of those points, and it will populate on the screen for you. All right, if we look at the next one, we're actually multiplying by a half this time. And so the y values are going to get multiplied by a half. And so basically we're going to be shrinking by a half unit. So, or compressing. So we're going to multiply y this time by 1/2. And so this one might be a little bit trickier here because we're going to have to deal with some decimals. Not that big of a deal. So this would shrink to a half right here, and this would shrink to a half. And then half of 0 is still 0. So when you're doing it on the computer, you might actually want to use one of these other points right here because at 2, you'd be up here at 4, right? That's where the original function would be at. And so half of 4 would be 2, and half of 4 over here would be 2. And that might just make it a little bit easier for you to plot that on your graph. And so here we go. So sometimes you might want to use other points besides those 3 that we originally worked with, especially if you're going to start working with decimals. And that shouldn't happen very often. That should be very rare. For the most part, we should be working with nice whole numbers. All right, if we look at E, we have multiple transformations here. If you remember, we always want to deal with our left to right transformation first. And so this is going to cause us to go right 2 units. And then this is going to cause us to go up 1 unit. So we'll start with our original points right here. And then let's see, we are going to go right 2 up 1. So that's where that first point went. Maybe I'll color code these a little better. Let's see, and then let's see, this one will go right 2 and up 1. So that's going to be that point. And then my purple point, I'm going to go right 2 and up 1. So you can see the blue, red, purple. We shifted it over to here. And then the important thing is we want to make sure we understand that that's going to be our bowl-shaped one. Because we're going to be dealing with some other ones in a moment. We're going to be looking at 5 in total. So this is the first one that we're looking at, the quadratic function, which creates this graph is known as a parabola. Okay, our last one that we're going to look at for parabolas is f of x is equal to negative parentheses x plus 3 squared minus 2. And so this one has 3 transformations. So first we're going to go to the left 3, and then the up and down's always last, so we don't want to do the minus 2 yet. We need to do this reflection right here. So that's going to cause a reflection across the x-axis because all the y values are changing signs, because technically what's happening is all the y values are getting multiplied by -1. So you could put that if you want, multiply y by -1, or we can just put reflection. Oops. Reflection across the x-axis. Okay, and then the last part was the going down 2. Oops. Color code that a little bit. Let's see, down 2. All right, let me give myself a little bit more room. Okay, so here we go. So the original 3 points. Let's see, we'll color code this here, here, and here. Okay, so starting with my red point, I have to go left 3. 1, 2, 3. So I end up right there. Then I have to reflect across the x-axis. So I'm going to reflect across right here. And then I have to go down 2 more spots. Down 1, 2. So I'm going to end up right there. So that's where my red point ends up. Okay, so I went left 3, reflected across the x-axis, and then went down 2 spots. All right. Then let's look at the green one. So left 3 spots, so I end up right there. Reflect across the x-axis. Well, I'm on the x-axis, so I don't have anywhere to reflect to. I'm actually on that line. And then go down 2 spots. So I'm going to be right there. So that's where the green point ends up. Okay, and then my last one, the blue point. So let's see, we're going to go left 1, 2, 3. I end up here, but then I reflect, and then I go down 2 spots, and I end up right here. So what's going to happen with this parabola is it's actually going to open downwards. It's going to, all the other ones had been opening upwards. So this one actually opens downward, and that's because of that reflection that took place. Okay, so that's parabolas. The next one we're going to look at is the square root function. So right here, we want to begin by graphing the square root function. F of x equals the square root of x, and then use transformations of this graph um, to graph the given function that's going to be down here. Note, square roots can only be evaluated at non-negative numbers to return real numbers. Okay, so we don't want to deal with any of those imaginary numbers, the complex numbers. We want to avoid those. Also, you typically want to evaluate square roots at perfect squares. So, like, you don't want to do the square root of 2 or the square root of 3, stuff like that. So, I'll make a table for this one. So, like, for example, 0 is a good one because the square root of 0 is 0. 1's good because it's a perfect square, which is 1. See, 2, you're going to get a decimal. 3 would be a decimal, so I'm going to jump to 4. Square root of 4 will give you 2. And so those are those points right there that we're going to be using right there. And so I'm going to use all 3 of those, but on your, when you're doing your homework, you're going to plot the first point right here and then just 1 point to the right. It only takes 2 points in order to do it on your homework. But here I'm going to plot 3 just to make sure we get plenty of practice while doing these. So those are the 3 points we're going to use. So looking at this first one, I have f of x is equal to the square root of x and then plus 2. So that's going to cause me to move up 2 units. So my original 3 points are right here, the 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2. So they're all going to move up 2 units. So up to here, and up to here. And I'll go ahead and connect those and put an arrow on the end. And there we go. Okay, so you'll kind of notice with each one of these, we kind of start out pretty simple, and by the end, we'll have 2 or 3 transformations taking place. But for the most part, it's very similar. You just have to recognize which one you're dealing with. And so the other ones had the squared power, right? And then this is going to have the square root. So this time, the plus 2 is occurring inside the square root symbol right here. So that indicates that we're directly affecting x values instead. Now remember, it's counterintuitive, so we're not going to add 2 to x. We're actually going to remove 2 from x. We're going to go to the left. We're going to go left 2 on this one. So let me plot those original points, and then we're going to go left 2. There are my 3 new points. And then once again, I just kind of connect them, and there you go. Okay, part C actually has 2 transformations taking place. We have to start with this first one right here inside the square root symbol. And so that's going to cause us to go to the right. We're going to go right 1. And then this minus 3 is going to cause us to go down 3. So here are the original points. And so instead of having to do all the algebra, that's what the transformations are for. So we're going to go right 1 and down 1, 2, 3. Right 1, down 1, 2, 3. Right 1 and down 1, 2, 3. So those are going to be my 3 points. We'll go ahead and connect them. And there we are. Okay, so we have a few more down here. And so as I was kind of telling you, it's going to get a little bit more challenging as you go through these. And so now we have three things going on here. So we're going to start with that x plus 1 inside the radical. And so that's going to cause us to go to the left 1. Okay. And then we have a negative on the outside right there. And so that's actually going to cause a reflection across the x-axis. And so let's see, next, the last part is going to be the plus 2, which is going to cause us to go up 2. So we got a lot going on here, so I'm going to color code my 3 points this time so we can try to kind of keep track of this. And so if you take each one step at a time, you should be okay. So we're going to start by going left 1, okay? Reflect across the x-axis. Well, I'm currently on the x-axis, so nothing happens. And then go up 2 spots. So that red point actually ends up right there. Then looking at the green value, let's see, I'm going to go to the left 1, so I end up here. Then I reflect across the x-axis, so I'm down here now. But then I have to go back up 2, so it's kind of weird. Those two, the reflection and then the up 2, I actually landed right back to where I was. So I went left, reflected across the x-axis right here, and then went back up 2. So that one was kind of funny. Actually, the two transformations actually led me right back to where I was. Okay, so that's going to be my second point right here. And then my last point, the blue one. See, I'm going to go left 1, then I'm going to reflect across, and then I'm going to go up 2 spots. So I'm going to end up right there on the x-axis. Okay, so the way this one's going to look is because of the reflection, all the others you can see that they're kind of going up into the right. Well, now this one's going to be going down into the right. So it's going to be going like this, down into the right. All right, and let me get this stuff out of the way. There we go. So that's where those original 3 points were. And then we move things around, left, reflect, up 2. This is where we ended up. All right, our next one, let's see. So we're going to start with going right. We're going to go right 2. And then here, this is causing a stretch by a factor of 2 to our y values. So basically, you're going to stretch vertically by a factor of 2. I like to just kind of put it in terms of multiply y by 2. But technically, if they were asking for a description, it would be a stretch, a vertical stretch of a factor of 2. So once again, let's plot those points. And I'm going to color code these again. And so let's see, this blue point, let's see, we're going to go to the right 2, and then multiply the y value by 2. Well, y is 0, so I'm just going to stay right there. So that's where that first point ends up. Then my green point, we're going to go right 2, and then multiply the y value by 2. So y is currently 1, but I'm going to multiply by 2, so now I'm going to end up right there. That's where the green point ends up. And then the red point, we're going to go right 2. And then the y value currently is 2, but we're going to multiply that. 2 times 2 is 4. So those are going to be my new points, those bigger. I tried to make them bigger, those dots right there. So I'm going to connect them. And here we go. And that's it. And so you notice you see that vertical stretch. And so it's getting pulled up at a faster rate. All right, F. This one's going to be a little interesting because we have that negative with the x. But before I do that, I have to deal with the minus 2, which is going to cause us to shift to the right 2. Okay, and then that negative there, we haven't seen that one in a while. That's actually a reflection across the y-axis. So that's going to be a reflection across the y-axis. Okay, So let's plot those points. So let's see here, here, and there. Okay, so starting with the green point, I'm going to go to the right 2, but then I have to reflect across the y-axis, so it's going to cause me to flip all the way over here. So now I'm at x being -2. X goes from being +2 to x being -2. So that's what that does. That's what that negative does there, is it causes my x values to change signs. Okay, let's look at the blue one. So I'm going to go to the right 2, and then my x value currently is 3, but now it's going to reflect across over to -3. And then let's see my red point. So I'm going to go to the right 2, and then my x value currently is 6, but I'm going to reflect across the y-axis, so it goes from being 6 to -6. So what's going to be different about this one is instead of going up and to the right, we're going to go up but to the left. We're going to go up and to the left. Let's see. There we go. And there we go. Okay, that's square roots for us. We have 3 more functions we're going to look at, but I'm going to go ahead and stop this and make this part 1, and we'll pick up on part 2.